Welcome to episode 4 of Geno's Guys. I'm your host, Connor, joined by just Andrew today, and we are Geno's Guys. We're doing our second and final positional preview for the 2024-25 season. We talked all about the guards last time. There's a couple of guards sprinkled into this preview just because we have so many guards on the roster. Women's basketball, I feel like majority of the players are listed as guards, but we were talking about 7 players last time. We'll talk about 7 players this time. And the first player for this, we'll call it front court preview, is Sarah Strong, the number 1 overall recruit freshman. Andrew, what's your initial thoughts about Sarah Strong? Obviously, a much needed addition after losing Aaliyah Edwards last year to the WNBA draft. Just how important is Sarah Strong to this team?
Well, funny enough, she committed after we were knocked out by Iowa in the Final Four. And I remember seeing it. And I mean, obviously, everybody was sad because we were knocked out. And if you remember that game, it wasn't technically a fair ending, in my opinion. I mean, stuff happens. Iowa didn't end up winning, but it was a game that got taken away by the referees. But I remember her committing basically right after that, and knowing that we had the number 1 recruit. I feel like the tides kind of turned pretty quickly. They went from sad that we didn't win to, well, we're gonna be good again next year anyway. So I feel like she's gonna open a million doors for this team because last year our big problem was the forwards, honestly. We had Aaliyah Edwards, but we couldn't rely on one person. Ice Brady was hurt her freshman year, big step up last year. But I think Sarah Strong is going to open a lot of doors. Her and Jana El-Alfy, who we'll talk about in a little bit, are going to be a really good forward and center duo for us this year.
Yeah, I feel like they have to because as you'll learn, and I'm sure you guys already know listening to this, the front court is really inexperienced on this team. You have Sarah Strong, she's likely going to be a starter as a freshman in that scrimmage, preseason exhibition, whatever you want to call it, game against Fort Hays State. She started, she played 28 minutes, went 5 of 13 shooting, 11 points, 8 rebounds. Solid performance for her in her first real collegiate minutes. But they're really going to rely on her to play a bulk of those minutes inside because Ice Brady, who we'll talk about next, she, like you said, missed a year. We have El-Alfy, who didn't play at all last year, hasn't really played organized basketball in almost 18 months, and a bunch of other players who we'll talk about who we don't know when they'll even make their season debuts. So obviously there's a lot of injury concerns here, as there is every year, but I feel like Strong is going to be strong. No pun intended there. She's going to have a strong impact on this team, especially right away seeing the injuries.
I mean, I honestly feel like we're going back to the teams when we had Olivia Nelson-Ododa and Aaliyah Edwards here with Yana and Sarah. I mean, honestly, that's what I pictured when I first was trying to think about our starting lineup. That lineup worked really well until we ran into Aaliyah Boston in the national championship. But I'm really excited for this because obviously that was our huge problem last year. And looking at the roster this year, it really should not be a problem.
Yeah, and another thing, as we mentioned, Strong is a freshman. Geno, he has had to play freshman a lot over the past few years, so that's something he's not afraid to do or worried to do. Last year, KK Arnold, Ashlyn Shade played a lot of minutes due to injuries, of course, but always freshmen seem to play a decent amount for Geno. So it should be interesting to see how Sarah Strong performs in her freshman season, especially with all the hype around her being the number 1 overall recruit in the class. But I'm sure she'll handle it just fine. The next player, as I said, we talked about is Ice Brady. She started next to Sarah Strong in that Fort Hays State game. She didn't have her best performance. She didn't score. She went 0 for 5 from the field. Did have 5 rebounds and 4 assists, so was doing the other stuff. But what's your thoughts about her going into the year? Because she's another player, probably just as important as Sarah Strong. Because even though she missed a year, she still is going to be relied upon for a majority of those minutes inside.
She's going to have to be really good again this year because I feel like there's still, even though she's pretty fresh out of that injury, they're still going to take Jana El-Alfy pretty lightly to start the year. Obviously, you don't want to get her injured again. And her injury, Achilles, obviously with the men's team, we've seen an Achilles injury. That player just wasn't the same, unfortunately. So we absolutely don't want that for Jana, especially that she's a freshman, young. But I feel like Ice is really going to get the majority of those minutes to start the year, and she's going to have to be obviously scrimmage. Does it matter? Yes, but not really. That's kind of how I take it. But she's definitely going to have to be better than she was because if that's a really good opponent, then we may not win that game with the performance that she had. But at the same time, that was the first game always good to have a scrimmage, and I feel like she'll break that rust off and she'll be fine for us this year.
Yeah, keep on mentioning that Ice Brady missed a year. It wasn't last year. She missed the year before. So she has a full year under her belt, and it was last year. She was one of the few healthy ones for Geno last year. She played 39 games, started three of them. She averaged 4 points per game. So I feel like we'll see a slight raise in those numbers, maybe closer to seven-ish points per game, especially seeing the production that is lost with Leah Edwards and Nika Mule. But I don't know. I feel like Ice Brady, I don't know if she'll be a starter the full season because spoiler, you guys already know we only had 8 players available for that Fort Hays State game out of like 14 on the roster. So I'm not sure if Ice stays in that starting role all year, but if she does, I feel like she's poised for a breakout, technically sophomore campaign. The next player we'll be talking about is Jana El-Alfy, as Andrew's been mentioning a bit. She is, I feel like, the wild card in this front court, seeing how talented she is, talented in the international stage, playing for Team Egypt. She just was injured all of last year. She got injured with that Achilles in playing for some FIBA with Egypt. I forget exactly what it is. I should know, but I don't. But she was balling out for them in that tournament. So she's a major question mark. She was healthy for that Fort Hays State game. She played 11 minutes off the bench. She made her only shot attempt, 2 points, 9 rebounds in 11 minutes is something to look at. So, Andrew, what's your thoughts about her? I know I'm asking you the same question every time, but that's kind of how we're going for this preview.
Well, those 9 rebounds I feel like are more important than the points because looking at this team, she's 6'5", so we're gonna obviously want her to score, but we're not gonna need to rely on her inside like we did last year with Leah Edwards. But those 9 rebounds in 11 minutes, I mean, that is gonna make teams' lives hell going up against her and Sarah and Ice, who can they're all very capable of getting rebounds inside. But if she can rebound as well as she did on Saturday in any given game, then this team is gonna be extremely good.
Yeah, I mean, she had 9 rebounds in 11 minutes. She also had 4 fouls in 11 minutes. So seems like she's giving it her all, and that comes at a price. She didn't foul out, but I honestly I didn't get a chance to catch this game. I don't know if you did, Andrew, but it seems like she was very aggressive both on the boards and defensively, which led to those 4 fouls. Which I mean, if you haven't played in 18 months and this is your first action, I expect you to be a little rusty, especially committing some silly fouls. So I'm not too worried about that. What her role is going to be this year, it seems she only played 11 minutes in this exhibition game. I'm not sure what her minutes will look like once the games start counting later this week, but I imagine she'll play in spurts and provide that rebounding that they need and also defense. She didn't block a shot in this game, but she's 6'5", 6'6". There's not a lot of teams in the country that have players that tall, that large, so that should certainly be in her favor and Geno's favor. Moving on to our next player we'll be talking about in this one, and that's Aubrey Griffin. Aubrey, we all know Aubrey. She's been here for quite some time, a veteran of the squad. She is one of the many players that we'll be talking about the rest of the way that is injured. When she comes back, we don't know. I believe I heard Geno say at one point we're hoping the new year, which that's 2 months away. So a lot of question marks there. But when healthy, she has proven that she can play on winning teams, be a starter on Final Four teams. So Andrew, once again, what's your thoughts on Aubrey, even though she's injured?
Well, honestly, I feel like the way if I were the coach and leading this team, if I were Gino, how I would do it is I would look at the season and how it's going, and I would keep tabs on how Aubrey's doing. But honestly, if we can show that we can win pretty swiftly without her, I wouldn't rush her back at all. If she has to sit out until the last 3 games of the season, so be it. She's way more valuable in the tournament than I think in the regular season. Obviously, this team's going to be a tournament team, but that's not saying if we keep losing, then she has to play. It's going to be a weird kind of way to do it, but I wouldn't necessarily rush her back because she's obviously a really important piece once we get going into the Big East and the NCAA tournament. But I think she's going to be really valuable there in March when we make our run to the title.
Yeah, that experience, like I mentioned, is something that's unmatched. And just a fun tidbit, because I have her career stats up here. This is her last year, obviously, Aubrey Griffin. Once she's gone, this goes for both the men and women's program. There will no longer be any players on either team that played in the American Conference. Aubrey played back in 2019-20, which this is her 6th year in the program now. So after she's gone, we'll officially be clear of those. I don't even know what adjective to use to call those American Conference years, but yeah, finishing up with Aubrey, she once she gets back in there, like you said, it doesn't we don't have to rush her back. There's no reason to rush her back. This team should win the Big East with or without Aubrey Griffin, but I imagine Geno wants to at least get her some sort of action before tournament play, which I think she will. I think he will. Moving on, next player, another injured player, Caroline Ducharme. Ducharme is someone who showed a lot of flashes right away as a freshman, but really has just battled the injury bug ever since that freshman year. But what, Andrew, what are you looking out? What are you looking for from her? Obviously, we don't know when she'll be back. I don't think we have a timetable for her either, but I don't know. What's your thoughts on Caroline?
Well, of all the injuries, she's going to have to be the one that they're most careful with because her injuries are head injuries, and those are the most scariest that can happen. And she has had quite a few of them. So I was shocked that she came back this year. After last year, I was just thinking that she would retire and take a role that, like, say, on the men's team, Mamadou Diarra did after he found out he really couldn't play anymore. Honestly, that's what I was thinking, that she would just stay with the team, but would medically retire from basketball. But I mean, she still wants to play, so that's awesome. We're happy that she's still here playing for us. But then again, she's been hurt for a long time. Really didn't play much. I think she played in the first 3 games last year, and then decided to redshirt that season. So we haven't really seen much from her in a long time. But I still think obviously she's still the good player that she was when she committed here back in, good Lord, 2020, I believe. Um, and I'm really looking forward to having her back because she can shoot that three ball like none other. And like I said with Aubrey, if she's not ready for Big East play, that's fine. Make sure she's ready for the tournament. And just like with Aubrey, she's going to be a really, really big piece for us down that stretch.
Yeah, obviously the concussion, the head, neck injury, whatever it formally is, that's something you don't usually see much of in basketball. That's definitely a prominent issue in football. We all know that, but it's scary because if you get a concussion, I forget. Oh, you're right. She did play. I have it up right here. Actually, I'm not going to guess. She started and played in 4 games last year before going down with the injury and didn't come back. So that's in November. You get a concussion in November and then you don't play again the rest of the season. That's a lot more than basketball, like you said. That's something that can mess you up for life. We've seen a bunch of, again, I'm going back to football, but like concussions not killing people, but like ruining their lives because it just messes with your brain. And I'm kind of rambling on about something I'm not really too familiar with. But yeah, dude, I remember when Ducharme came in as a freshman, she was a great 3-point shooter. The percentages weren't there, but she hit some timely 3-point shots. And last year's Ashlyn Shade reminded me a lot of freshman year Caroline Ducharme. I feel like it's just a similar build, similar player that shoots the three ball. But yeah, Ducharme, she was a starter last year. She started all 4 games she played in before she went down. I don't think she'd be a starter when she comes back this year. That's just how the team looks now. But I don't know. I feel like if she comes back, she'll provide a great impact because she played in 31 games her freshman year, 23 in her sophomore. She was one of the few that was healthy for both of those years. But yeah, when she comes back, I feel like she'll provide a solid impact. We got a couple more players to discuss here, and then we'll talk a little bit about the Boston University game. Not much to talk about there, hopefully, but Ayanna Patterson is next, and this is a player who once again has dealt with many injuries in her career. She won't be ready for opening night like Ducharme and Griffin. But what's your thoughts on her, Andrew? She didn't play at all last year. Her freshman year, she was actually healthy the whole year, 30 games played, but missed a year, and it looks like she's gonna miss the start of this one. What do you got on her?
I mean, I feel like this is just I'm repeating the same thing for all these people. I mean, she's just another one that, I feel like a little different than them because I feel like she should be ready to go a little earlier than, say, Caroline and Aubrey, but she's just another one, very athletic. We saw her in a freshman year, as you said, 30 games played. So we saw what she can do, but then just injuries are killer. But I think she's going to be ready to go before Aubrey and Caroline. And I think that she's going to make an impact. I'd say towards, if I had to guess, obviously I don't really have much insider information. I would have to guess that she'd be good for by the USC game. I think that's the main target. I would say if you're going to be a target for a time of return, it would be that one, and then maybe towards the middle of January for the other ones. But I feel like she'll be ready for that one. She'll come off the bench to start. Maybe she'll find her way back into the starting lineup. in the three position, but she'll again be a really big piece for us.
Yeah, and she missed the year, like I said. She played 10 minutes a game as a freshman, so she didn't play much to begin with as 2 years ago. I don't know what you expect from her even when she comes back because we have, like we've talked about, we have Sarah Strong in front of her, Ice Brady's in front of her. I'd imagine Jana El-Alfy will be in front of her. So it may be tough to find minutes for Ayanna, but like her freshman year, I don't know how much Geno intended on playing her freshman year, but she still played in 30 games because of all the injuries. So if you're healthy, that's the first step in getting minutes. And I think once Ayanna's back, Geno will find somewhere to play her because fingers crossed, there might be injuries that we don't even know about, that players that get injured over the next couple of weeks, couple of months that pop up. So yeah, I feel like Ayanna, I don't know what her role will be, but when she's healthy, I feel like she'll make an impact. I believe we only have one more player to talk about. The only that's a lie. Sarah Strong's a freshman. So that's not true. The second freshman we'll be talking about in today's preview, Morgan Cheli. Morgan did not play in that game against Fort Hays State, but she I feel like will be back the soonest. I don't think there's much concern about her availability. Maybe I don't know what her availability will be for these first couple of games, but I feel like they held her out of that exhibition game because it's an exhibition game and it doesn't matter. And if there's even a slight question about her health, there's no reason to play. But I know we don't know much about her because she's a freshman, but what do you know about her, Andrew? What can we look out for?
Well, I mean, you saw first night. You know, you were there. You saw how well both her and Ali Zabel, they could both really shoot the ball. And I feel like that's where we're going to see her mostly is taking those 3-point shots, even though she technically is a forward. Like we said, though, college basketball positions in the women's game, it's usually just guard and forward. Not really necessarily given center position, but I feel like that's where we'll see her off the bench. Obviously, she is a freshman, so we know we can't really say where we think she's going to play because last year KK Arnold and Ashlyn Shade had to play a majority of the season for 38 minutes a game, and they were freshmen. So we really don't know what to think about the freshman besides Strong because she's the number one recruit. But I feel like we will definitely see her down the stretch. She'll impact us as big as everybody else will.
Yeah. I mean, she's listed as a guard on the website. I know we're doing the front court forward preview, but I'm not gonna lie, I just chopped the roster in half. Like the tallest seven are in this one and the shortest seven are in the other one. I know that's a silly thing to do, but like you said, it's positionless. I mean, Jana El-Alfy is listed as a center, but after that, it's all guards and forwards, and they're all pretty much within 3-4 inches of each other. So women's basketball is a lot more positionless than men's basketball is. But yeah, to your point, if she's healthy, I feel like she'll have an impact like a KK Arnold or Ashlyn Shade because in that opener, in the not the opener, in the exhibition game, Ali Zeibel, who we talked about in the last preview, she played 28 minutes off the bench against Fort Hays State. I don't think Geno envisioned playing Ali Zeibel 28 minutes in any game this year. Ideally, with all if everyone was healthy, not that she's not talented, just that there's so many veterans on this team. But to my point, I feel like once Morgan Cheli gets healthy, I feel like she'll find her way into the rotation because I don't think Geno, especially early on, is going to be sitting many like healthy players because they don't have that many options to sit. But yeah, that's all I got on Morgan Cheli. We'll learn more about her as the season goes on. Just we don't have much to go off of right now, but we're gonna move on, do a very quick review of the Boston University game for the opener. If you guys, obviously we're a new show, but we have our men's show where we do previews. If you haven't seen that before, usually we do a segment where we choose players to watch for the upcoming game, and then we talk a little bit about the game. We're not gonna do too much detail about like the game itself because it's Boston University against UConn. If it's even close, I feel like that's something went very wrong for Geno. That's something to be concerned about. But we'll just do the players to watch and probably just wrap it up here. Andrew, I know it's opening night. You can probably choose anyone, but who's your one player to watch? It could be someone we already said as well in the front court.
Honestly, I'll probably just go with Sarah Strong because she's making her debut. I'll go with the headliner. Obviously, Paige had 27 against Fort Hays State. There's a lot of people who won't play, but I'll go with the debut of the freshman. She'll more than likely start. Obviously she's going to contribute, but I'm really looking forward to see what she does in her first regular season basketball game that actually counts.
And I'm gonna go guard, contrary to your forward. I'm gonna go Caitlin Chen. If you guys remember from last episode, we talked about the guards. We decided Caitlin Chen was like the wild card of the backcourt, kind of like El-Alfy is the wild card of the front court. But Caitlin Chen in that game against Fort Hays State played a team high 35 minutes in the starting lineup. She scored 14 points, 7 rebounds, 5 assists, just a complete game. Curious to see how she does in a game that counts. Like you said, this counts now. It's for real. But especially with all these injured players, she is someone that's going to have to play a bulk of minutes early on, and I want to see what that looks like. I also want to see how she adjusts, obviously coming in from Princeton, which is a different level of basketball than it is UConn, how she adjusts in her first game. But yeah, Caitlin Chen is my player to watch. You got anything else before we wrap up in our last preview of the season?
I'm just looking forward to a great season, honestly. Obviously, last year ended pretty sourly, so I'm really looking forward to a great season. Hopefully, 2025 is the year where both Husky teams win it.
Yeah, hopefully we are 1 year off from the year ending in four thing, but I feel like that's fine. Doesn't matter. I'll reiterate this. We reiterate it. We said it in the first episode of this podcast, but we've done the men's show for 2 years, and they won the title in both of those years. We're back for year three in that show. We're here in year one in this show. Every single year we've talked about the UConn basketball team on a podcast that team has won the national championship. So this is the test. Balls in your court, ladies. If UConn can win the title, would be at least 3 for 4, hopefully 4 for 4. But yeah, that's all I got. As for like our season coverage, we usually try to do like recaps and previews of the games in between games. That with the men's show as well, that might be tough to do it every single game, but we're gonna try our best to get it out for you guys. We'll definitely recap this opening night game because I feel like there'll be a lot to talk about with like rotations and how players performed. But yeah, so until then, thank you guys for watching, listening, and stay tuned for the next one.